Hello, everyone, and welcome to Better Together. My name is Julian Lute, and on behalf of Great Place to Work, thank you for joining today's CEO conversation. Now, this past year has challenged service-based businesses, large and small, and Hilton is no exception. Like many companies, Hilton had to pivot hard in the face of this COVID-19 pandemic, and they chose to pivot towards more care for their people and building more trust in the process, even when faced with historically difficult decisions in support of the business. Maybe some of the most difficult in their more than 100-year history. But it's times like these that leaders brought Hilton's values to life, and we're excited to learn more. Let's cover a few housekeeping notes before we get started. As always, we are looking forward to your questions, so please submit them in the questions panel. Our colleagues will field the questions and we'll do our best to answer them. We'll be recording this session, so we'll send you on the recording within 48 hours. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce Chris Nassetta, President and CEO of Hilton. Chris joined the company in 2007, and previous to that, he served as President and CEO of Host Hotels and Resorts Incorporated, a position he held since 2000. He joined Host in 1995 as Executive Vice President and was elected Chief Operating Officer in 1997. Before joining Host, Chris co-founded Bailey Capital Corporation, where he was responsible for the operations of the real estate investment and advisory firm. Prior to founding Bailey Capital Corporation, he spent 7 years at the Oliver Carr Company, ultimately serving as Chief Development Officer. Hilton has been recognized as one of the 100 best companies to work for 5 years straight, including being ranked #1 in back-to-back years. Their workforce is diverse and great for all. They're one of the best for parents, for women, for millennials, and one of the companies that care. And they do this across the world, having been celebrated as the best workplace in 2014 in the last year alone, ranking #3 on the world's best list. Chris will be joined in conversation by our CEO, Michael Bush. Chris, it's great to see you again. And Michael, without any further ado, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Julian. And Chris, it is great to see you again. And I'm glad to see Julian leave too, because somehow he was propped up in his chair and can be feel intimidated.
I must say I did feel intimidated by Julian. Julian, thank you for the very kind introduction. And Michael, it is always wonderful to see you. You always have a smile on your face no matter what's going on. And thankfully, we've been able to keep up during the craziness of the last year. And I was recalling, just a bit ago that one of the last, big business trips I did was to come out to your conference last year in San Francisco. And I have very fond memories for a whole lot of reasons, because the world changed pretty radically, in the weeks following that. But wonderful to see you, and thanks so much for having me.
Sure, Chris, and good to see you as well. And I just, it's just you mentioning that takes me right back to that moment in early March in 2020, and where you were on our stage sharing with people what it was like, to be #1 on the list 2 years in a row, and having a good time because you happened to be on a competitor's stage, so you were just loving the experience. And we had a great time, and then the world changed. The world changed for so many people and for so many business leaders, but you're part of that group of leaders that it changed. I think of you, and I think about our friends in hospitality, as well as the airlines, where it was a completely different kind of experience. Can you we're not going to dwell on 2020, but it's still real for all of us. But could you take us back to that moment in time when you saw your global occupancy dropping to less than 10%? What was at the top of your mind and your executive committee at that time when really the world stopped turning?
Yeah, there was a lot went through my mind, as you might guess, because the world changed so quickly. I mean, we had honestly some sense of what was coming, probably ahead of most, even when I was out with you on stage in San Francisco, because we have a big business in China and in Asia. You could sort of start to understand that this was going to be bigger than a local issue in China or a regional issue in Asia Pacific. So it wasn't an overnight thing, but it happened it happened pretty quickly. I mean, what's interesting is you go back, and this is more than you're asking, but probably, as it relates to culture, really important to note. Like our company, in 19, when we got to the early part of 20, we were just finishing celebrating our 100th year anniversary, 2 years, #1 on Great Place to Work, with your guys' help, and growing faster, innovating, better than we ever had in our history, and in a lot of ways, in every way, sort of hitting on all cylinders, culturally and otherwise when we went into this. But and it was difficult, and we've made it through, and I'm sure we'll get that. But reality is, our company in that 101-year history has lived through a lot. We've lived through, I wasn't here for it, but we lived through the world wars. We lived through the Great Depression. I mean, personally, in my time in the industry, I've lived through, the S&L crisis, the dot-com bubble burst, 9/11, the Great Recession. In fact, I was here at Hilton, doing, trying to rebuild this company at that time, and now this. And, I think the reality is, I sort of kid, even though there's nothing funny about this, that the basic playbook on dealing with a crisis, from my point of view, is really the same. I mean, I may add a chapter or two or rewrite a couple that I've written over the years, but how we dealt with crises in this company, how I dealt with crises both here and other places, I think it's been reasonably consistent. So those are the things that were going through my head. The first is, sort of, I call it my 3 Ps, like protect your people. Like, you're nothing, particularly in a service industry, without your people. In our case, we serve 200 million customers a year. We need to make sure, and many of them are out and they're stuck and they're in harm's way, and we have to help protect them and get them home until they can, while they're trapped in various places all over the world, which took literally months to do. We have 400,000+ team members that are part of this ecosystem of serving those customers who are out in the field, in harm's way, that we have to take care of. So what was going through my mind initially, as this started to evolve, is like, where are people? How do we make sure customers, team members are taken care of? Because that's what we're about. And we're about the people. We're about the people that are serving the people that are our customers. We take care of them. They take care of our customers. Then it was, it moved very quickly into protecting the business. So we were suffering catastrophic, excuse me, it's allergy season. We were suffering catastrophic declines, as you point out. I mean, we were down to 10% occupancy at a time we would probably have been 80%. We were closing thousands of hotels in the world, which never happened ever in my, in the 100-year history of the company. And so you have that happening. You have no revenues, right? You have a lot of expenses that you can't stop, on a dime. And so making sure that we protected the company, we had adequate liquidity, that we protected, our owners and helped them as best we could, making sure that we protected our customers and providing the flexibility that they needed, making sure that the work we did in our communities was protecting our communities as best we could. And then the third element, which you would think took time but not much, was the third of my 3 Ps: prepare for recovery. I mean, I think the big thing that people miss is, when you're in a crisis, you can be all consumed by it, and you should be to a degree. But if you don't sort of peek your head out of the foxhole, so to speak, then you're not going to see where there are opportunities. And the truth is, as horrible as this has been, in every one of the experiences that our company has been through, or I personally have been through here or other places, crisis is an opportunity, and the bigger the crisis, the bigger the opportunity. But if you don't have your head out looking around and making sure that you're thinking about it and planning for it, and making sure, my third P, you're preparing for recovery, you're not going to take advantage of it. So, we did a really good job in getting our people out of harm's way. I think we did. We had a bulletproof balance sheet and liquidity. So we didn't, we very quickly shifted into making sure that we were doing everything to protect all of our stakeholders. And the last thing I'd say is, it's and it has everything to do with the culture and the fiber of the DNA of our company. Was everything we were doing was about, values-based decision making. We have an incredibly strong value system. That's what is the foundation of our culture. And so as we were thinking about our 3Ps, protect the people, protect the business, prepare for recovery, it was always about values-based decision-making and thinking about our key stakeholder groups, our customers, our team members, our owner community, and our communities, and making sure that we were a force for good as best we could with each one of those stakeholders, and that everything we did was sort of filtered through our value system. Because here's the other thing that happens a lot in a crisis. It's like, people panic, and it's every man and woman for themselves, and everybody, and you just say, well, you got to do to, necessity. You sort of throw out, your basic rules, or some people do. And I just wanted to make sure that, because that is the foundation of our company and our culture is our value system, that as we thought about every decision, and there were tough decisions, Michael, as you know, you and I have talked about it, that had to be made, but that we did them in the right way, that we where we did impact people, we took incredibly good care of them, and we're very thoughtful, so that when we get to the other side of it, as it relates to the culture that you're going to lean on in a crisis like this, which we did, that you emerge from it intact and hopefully stronger. That, the other thing about crisis is it can build stronger bonds if you're thoughtful about how you address the crisis, how you treat your people, and making sure your decisions are grounded in your values.
Chris, one of the things I noticed was, as you were furloughing employees, doing the things that you had to do so you can continue doing the 3Ps. Looking at some of the posts on LinkedIn was amazing to me. People writing about how they felt about Hilton. And they did it in a way, it was, we shared this within Great Place to Work and outside of it. They thanked Hilton and yet they were transitioning.
No, I know. It broke my heart. I tried to talk to every senior person and every person I could. Obviously, the numbers, we're a very big organization, so it was hard, but I talked to a lot of people. I didn't have one conversation that was hostile in any way. I didn't have one conversation where a team member didn't understand it, didn't thank me for the experience and the time and the care and the attention that, and the opportunities they had when they were here. It broke my heart. Our industry was so impacted. There really wasn't, in protecting the business, there was no other way but to have some impact. But, people had not only had good opportunities, but we took very good care of people. We tried the best we could, with many of our partners, in business that were doing well, make sure that, we set up really sophisticated outplacement opportunities to, core partners of ours that were hiring, people because they were a beneficiary of the crisis, where we were harmed by the crisis. And so, yeah, listen, I'm not gonna. It would be, and people on my team are listen to this. It would be, I think, a stretch to say, hey, we emerged with a stronger culture than we went in, because I think, like anything, I liken it to, like, whatever the analogy is, like a gas tank on a car. You build a culture over a long period of time, because that is what makes you resilient. When things, go wrong, you lean on it. And so we've spent, as you know, decades focused on building this culture, and we leaned on it. And to a degree, because of the severity of the situation, it has to have impacted our culture. And maybe I'm being a Pollyanna when I say this, but you see the data doesn't suggest that, right? The data suggests that it bonded the remaining team, and remaining culture was still a very large group of people are more excited, inspired by, proud of the company and what we have been doing even in the crisis, and closer together and more trusting of the company and their leaders than they were going into the crisis. And so I do believe we had to lean on it and use some of the gas in the tank, so to speak. But we, thankfully had a pretty full tank, but probably less than I thought. If you and I did talk at the beginning of the crisis, I said, I'm so glad that we've worked so hard on this culture, because now we need it, right? And we're gonna use some of the, fuel in the tank. We're gonna use some of the reserves. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think we used a lot less of it than I thought we would. by virtue of how, again, values-based decision making. People understood we were dealt a certain hand, we didn't do it to ourselves, and we were trying to protect the company to make sure that we can continue to be the engine of opportunity that we've been. I mean, the reality is, I think when we wake up in 2 or 3 years, because of the things that we've done in the crisis, we will be a bigger, stronger, faster growing company that's going to generate far more opportunity, even though we were doing a lot of it, up before the crisis. I think we will be generating more opportunities for our people, and have an opportunity to create an even more powerful culture and do even more for customers, our owners, even more great work in the communities, as a result of sort of, having gone through this process. So I would want to do it again. I'm not asking for a repeat. I did, but it's a testament to a degree to the work we do, we've done with you guys have been so instrumental in helping us over a long period of time continue to figure out, like, how do we keep investing? Because I sort of wake up every day. It's sort of part of how I was brought up. Like, the fact, I've said this to you, the fact that we're 2 years running the #1 great place to work, that's not good enough. Like, in other words, the easy answer is then to sort of rest on your laurels, like, yay, us. But as you know, I never stop. I'm relentless about it. Like, we can be better. We're still trying to figure out and engage with our teams to figure out, all right, what did we do well in the crisis? What would you like us to do differently? Where do we need to lean in the future? Because I think if we've proven anything out of all this, like, that culture is what got us through, not in okay shape, but in really good shape. That culture, that is what allowed us to be so dynamic and resilient in the process of getting through probably the most difficult set of circumstances in the last 100 years.
Yeah. Chris, I know you did work with your Hilton Workforce Resource Center, to get and a lot of your people got moved to other great companies on our list, which was cool and thoughtful. And I just, just one more thing about, just that special amount of care for 2020. And then, I mean, just thinking about all the things you just talked about, all huge, complex problems. And then you did this thing called the 1 Million Room Nights Initiative.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, that's like crazy. But
it was, by the way, my team thought I was crazy, Michael. So this is how it happened, probably more than anybody wants to know. But it's an interesting testament to, like, you gotta, I call it, I always describe, like, steady hands on the wheel. I think for a leader, that's what your people need is, have a strategy, build a culture, have a great strategy, and then keep working at both, but keep a steady hand on the wheel. Don't jerk the wheel left and right, take every exit, because that rattles people. And as I've said, sort of implied, a lot of times what goes wrong in companies, people panic, or they, like, oh my gosh, hard right, hard left, instead of taking a deep breath and figuring out, all right, here's the situation. Like, it's tough, but there is a playbook. We all have the experience to know how to, what's right, wrong. Make sure it's always values based. So that, I'll sort of lead in with the values based. So here I am, one Saturday morning in the middle of this mess, and this is early. This is March, okay? Yeah, I think it was March, like late March, but it's still very early. And I'm reading, just all these sad stories about what was going on, predominantly at that time in New York. And what was happening is, the hospitals were being, overwhelmed, and they were building all these temporary hospitals, bringing the hospital ships in. And so you had a flood of first responders coming from all over the country to help, which is so amazing to see, in a time of crisis, how our country comes together, and, how all in the healthcare community were trying to flood the zone. But here's the thing, they had nowhere to stay. So I was reading these stories about people were sleeping, in like the back of stores. We were sleeping in their cars because there weren't hotels open, or they couldn't get rooms, or they did, or they couldn't do it safely, and so, and they didn't want, if they lived in the area, they didn't want to go home to their families, right? Because they're working with people with COVID. They didn't want to give it to their whole family. They were being responsible. And I said, you know what? We got to be part of the solution. It was just literally one Saturday, and I called somebody on my team, and I said, I have this crazy idea. our head of corporate affairs at the time, I said, I want to give away 1 million rooms. Because I said, what do we have that can help? Like, I'm reading all these people, we have rooms, right? And they're unoccupied. Now, there's a cost to them, and our owners own these. We don't own them. We manage or franchise them. So I got to figure out, it's a complex ecosystem. So I got to figure that out. But I said, these rooms are sitting empty. People are sleeping in their cars. They don't want to infect their families. We don't want them to infect their families, but we want them helping on this crisis. So my team said, like, what? Like, they tried to talk me off the ledge. And I said, listen, I'm doing this. Like, I'm going to give away 1 million. How are you going to pay for it? Like all the money. I said, I will find a way to pay for this. And I made one phone call. An hour later, I called my good friend, chairman and CEO of American Express, Steve Squeri. And I said, Steve, I got this crazy idea. My team tells me I'm crazy. I need a partner. I want to give away 1 million rooms. Within 30 seconds, Steve said, I'm in. What's it going to cost? How do we do it? And we did it. We in American Express, in partnership with our ownership community, funded, effective 1 million, giving away 1 million rooms at no cost. We did a deal with World Central Kitchen to feed the people, because there was very little food service in the hotels. So I think that, back to what I said, values. So it'd be easy for me to not have worried about those people, thought about that, or done anything about it, because I think I could defend myself in saying we had enough problems, right? At that moment, it was survival, right? It really was. It was unclear where this was going. We'd never seen anything like it. And there, for the whole industry, it was survival. But it just, again, our value system is such that, like, we're here, like, we were founded on the noble premise by an amazing man, Conrad Hilton, who started, with the philosophy of, he called it the light and warmth of hospitality. You've heard me talk about it, but his view was travel and tourism can make the world a better place. It allows you to exchange ideas, see and understand other cultures, create better understanding, and lead to peace in the world and overall a better world. And so everybody in this company, our true north is, however we do it, we all filter it in a million different ways as we think about our various roles in the company. But if people come to work, at this place thinking that we're going to make the world a better place. And so that's part of that's our true north. That is the North Star. And when we're in the middle of a crisis, again, when is there more need to do good in the world than in the middle of a crisis? And so my attitude was, there is no excuse. I don't care how bad it is. We can help. We're going to, and we did, and we continue to do. I mean, by the way, we've been part of the relief effort all over the world in hundreds and hundreds of our hotels with the same underlying philosophy. Be part of the solution. Don't become part of the problem. No matter how tough our circumstances, we can find a way to help.
Well, big thank you to you and your team and the great people of Hilton for doing that
Thank you.
doing that for all of us.
Well, we got it done. My team didn't think I was as crazy when we got it done.
Yeah.
I do remember debating. They kept saying it's unfair, but they kept trying to talk me down to, like, Chris, how about like 650,000 rooms? And I was like, I'm giving away. I said, there's more than 1 million needed. If we do it, but a bunch of competitors and others will do it, but 1 million rooms will get everybody's attention. And I said, I'm not trying to get credit for it. I'm trying to solve a problem. And if we do something that is big and bold, first of all, 1 million rooms, that'll help, but it will get others to take action, which it did. We had a bunch of other folks in the industry follow suit. And so we ended up, my guess is we provided millions of rooms to first responders at no cost. So yeah, it ended up working out, but they were trying to talk me down.
All right. Well, we're all glad that they didn't. And I know you've got some remarkable people on your team.
I do indeed.
And so, Chris, now sitting where we are in 2021, travel starting to open back up. I was just happy to see, like, Denver, 2,000 flights canceled. That meant there were 2,000 flights. So exactly. Things are coming back. What are you thinking about in terms of bringing your staff back, to full staff as demand increases? What can you help all of us with? What are you seeing over the next few months in terms of?
Yeah, I think in terms of recovery, it's my own view, and you know me well enough to know I'm a raging optimist by nature. But I think, talking to health experts, because I'm not one, but we're advised by a bunch. I think the light is at the end of the tunnel. I mean, I think this is not gonna we're not gonna wake up one day and it's like COVID's gone and we're done. I mean, it's gonna take more time and be gradual, and there'll be lingering impact from it. But I think when you get, certainly here in the U.S., and I think other parts of the world are in slightly different places, but let's talk about the U.S., which is where the biggest part of our business is. I think as you get to the late spring and summer, both by virtue of exposure and vaccination levels based on the trajectory of manufacturing and distribution, we're going to be close to herd immunity based on what the experts say, not Chris Nassetta. And so, there is a massive amount of pent up demand, because notwithstanding everybody saying like, oh my gosh, we're going to, we never need to travel, we don't need to leave our house because we all figured out this Zoom thing and we love it. I don't know about you, maybe I'm alone. I'm not loving it so much. No offense to Zoom or whatever the platform is. I think they've been incredibly helpful. We couldn't have run our company without all this technology, but it doesn't change my desire, and I think most people's desire that I'm talking to get back out. So I think what's been the impediment has been safety. And so when you get past those safety concerns, I think you're going to see a lot of people hit the road. And that's already happening, by the way. We're seeing it, and have been seeing it, as you've seen hospitalization rates and infection rates and death rates go down. You can correlate it with our business going up. We are still way, way off of where we would normally be. But my view is sometime between sort of May and July, you'll see a step change when people really do see that you've hit a level of herd immunity where this is not 100% behind us, but so, that we can say sort of, a bit of an all clear-ish sign. So, what we've been doing is we've been bringing back, teams, commensurate with the recovery, because the bulk of our teams, let me say, in an office context, we still are, being very careful in that regard. And obviously there are state laws and et cetera that are guiding a lot of this. But I would hope by this summer, late spring, summer, for the reasons I just described, that we're starting to ramp back up to a new normal, which will obviously for a long time, maybe forever, provide, for a different kind of flexibility. We were already pretty flexible, if the truth be known, and did a bunch of work from home. We had a bunch of work from home segments of our business to begin with. And in the front lines, that will go as recovery comes. That those folks will become obviously a lot have come back. If you look at the employment numbers in the latest data, a lot of it is in hospitality and tourism, because you've seen some recovery, but that will sort of step change as the recovery goes. Obviously, those hotels are owned by third parties, and they need to know that there's enough business to justify it. One of the things that I'm not proud of, but we worked really hard on for our frontline team members, either those that work for franchisees or that work directly for us, is to work with the government on the top up in unemployment insurance to state unemployment insurance, because we knew in the industry there was no choice but to furlough and or reduce force in all these hotels, because a lot of them are closed still. Many have opened, but they're still in the big cities, particularly many of them have been closed. So thankfully that's all been extended, which is terrific, through September. And I think I'm very hopeful that by the time we get to September, we're in a very different place. And while we're not going to be back to full employment in our industry, relative to where we were, we'll have come a long way from where we've been.
Well, Chris, that's all good. You're an optimist with some data. That's a great combination. And one of the things that happened, the stress on you and your people, unlike what a lot of business people had to go through, And yet we had, events in 2020 with George Floyd's murder, just being a tipping point, really just on top of this COVID thing. And one of the things that you did with all that you just described, with wondering if your balance sheet's going to hold up, is leaned into diversity, equity, and inclusion with your Courageous Conversation series. I mean, you could have gotten a pass on that. Oh, okay, but you didn't take it. You went for it, and also, some of your team, I know, Matt Schuyler, one of the greatest chief human resource officers in the world, certainly, who gets promoted, and then you promote Laura Fuentes, to be CHRO, not because of diversity and inclusion, because top talent rises to the top,
Correct.
But taking those two moves, because number one, if Laura wasn't there, she couldn't have got the job. So the pipeline's already written.
Yeah, and Laura had been my mentee for 5 years, maybe 6, I can't remember, a long time. And Laura she earned every bit of it. She is an amazingly talented person, and was doing in her prior role an extraordinary job, and doing an extraordinary job in her new role, as is Matt. And it's interesting. You're right. I mean, you'll get tired of hearing me say it, but I'll keep saying it because it's true. And it is, sort of the secret to all of this is values, right? You're right. My guess is, even with everything that was going on, with the, anxiety in the world of COVID, and then the race issues, given how bad our business was, I think people maybe had low expectations of us in terms of, being on the front line of other things, as we were dealing with a lot. But that's no excuse, right? And if you have a really good, strong value system, you can't let it be an excuse, because here's the thing. Our future, again, prepare for recovery, the third of my, 3 Ps, diversity and inclusion is part of the heart and soul of the company. I told you what Conrad Hilton's, underlying philosophy was: make the world a better place by creating cultural understanding. If that's not diversity, I don't know what it is. And so just because you're in a crisis, you can't set aside something that you believe is critically important to the business, to the success of the business over the long term. And importantly, if the secret sauce ultimately is your value system, that, sort of is the foundation of a culture, our people care about this. Our people are home, and they're watching this, right? And you and I know, because you and I, by the way, thank you. You and I kicked off the Courageous Conversation series. You were amazing, by the way. For once, I was not the force. You were. I shut up, and our team was so inspired by everything, your story and everything you had to say. All I had to do is just introduce you and let it go. But our people care deeply about this, both because it's important to business, and because they care deeply because it's important to society. So again, I think I could have gotten a hall pass. It's just not consistent with my value system or the value system of the company. And while I'm really proud of what we've done in diversity and inclusion over the years, you and I have talked about it a lot, there's more to do. And I think last year, George Floyd and other events of last year, I think, shine a bright light on just how much more there is to do. And I think, again, we have to be part of the solution on these sorts of things, just like what I did with our 1 million rooms in that one, what is relatively small instance. We're a big company, and operate at a global scale. And there are ways that if we're at the tip of the spear, we can be profoundly positively impactful in this arena, in our small ways. And so to me, it's like, you can't wait. We're proud of the work we've done, but last year made me realize there's just so much more to do. And there's so much I don't, like you and I have talked, there's so much I don't know and I can't know, given my upbringing and, where I come from. But what I do know is I know what I don't know, and I can listen and I can learn, and I can get our team members engaged that come from all walks of life, and we can do better. And so last year was sort of a lightning rod for us, which is funny because we had set goals and we had done a whole lot of work and have been recognized for it. As you know, I think last year we were #1 in diversity with you guys. I think maybe it was the year before, and we're #2 in Diversity Inc. So we it's not like we just, figured out this is an issue and that we need to be part of the solution. We've been working at it, but last year made me realize we need to do more, and we need to be even more serious about it. So we started thinking about, all right, how do we do courageous conversations was part of, we had everybody's attention because they were home and but we were connected virtually. We could talk to them in ways they weren't all moving around. We could talk to them in ways we never could. And so, that was an incredible means to start, making sure that this was getting the attention that it deserved. Our team member resource groups, we've always had them, but we tried to repurpose them, last year to really give them even more substance. Our unconscious bias training, we redid all of that to say, like, there's a better way. We could, we were always doing it, but we could do it better, and celebrate, finding ways even in a digital context to really culturally celebrate diversity. Recruiting, building new relationships, so that, that in the end we can have, unbelievably diverse slates of candidates. Like, we're not doing a lot of recruiting, honestly, at the moment, but we will. We're a recruitment machine, in normal times, and we'll get back to that. And there's a huge opportunity with the right relationships that can help us create really diverse slates of candidates to not only make it easier, but to really be successful. And then setting even bolder goals. We haven't officially come out with them, so Laura will get mad at me for doing this. But, my view is that, we should, in our goals in diversity, whether it's gender, race, whatever, it should be at parity, both corporately and ultimately over time, in the properties in the senior positions, it should be at parity with the population. And that to me is diversity, that it's representative of the population. And so the thing, our culture, if you look at our overall population, like all team members, we're unbelievably diverse and we are overrepresented. Okay. So you'd say, hey, great. You could weave a story that makes it look like we're doing great. But if the higher you go, by the way, we have great diversity high up. On our board is half gender diverse. We just brought our first Black board member on last year, Chris Carr, who's fabulous. So we have diversity, but typically it gets harder. It's been harder and less the higher you go. So for me, it's like, all right, I don't want to look at the whole. Yes, we should keep track of the whole enterprise, but I want to look at every step in the journey all the way up to the very tippy top, including our board, our executive committee, and over time set more ambitious goals and make sure that we're managing to those, we're compensating for those. And importantly, Michael, one of the things I'm personally really focused on is leadership levels in the hotels, because if you look at where we really, get the talent corporately, it comes out of the hotels. But if you look at the diversity in the senior ranks in the hotels, it's not where we want to be. Now, we've had goals, we've moved it a bunch. It's not like we haven't been focused on it. But I think we need more moonshots. We need to be even more focused on it. So part of this is getting even more aggressive and bold on the property level diversity goals, and then building the systems, as you know better than anybody. Like, you can't just set the goal and we gotta help. Laura and I and her team have to build the sort of the systems underneath it, so that we can help make sure that we get there. But doing it at the property level within our GM ranks and our senior property level folks is really important, because if you go down the hotels, all of it's there. We're not doing, not just us, we're better, I think, statistically than most of the industry, but none of us have done well enough at sort of taking that diversity that's in the hotels and sort of building it up so that it's at senior management of hotels that then provides the diverse pipeline that you want in the corporate environment. And that nirvana for me is parity with the population, and that it's organic, meaning that the ecosystem is sort of taking care of itself, because we have an unbelievably diverse overall workforce, but that we're just until we get it really working, we're differentially investing at the lower levels to make sure that we're building the pipeline of talent. And where we can't, we got to come in from the top, to make sure that we supplement it. But the ultimate goal for me would be 10 years from now, it's organic, meaning because the diversity is there, that we've got a programmatic approach to making sure we're developing from the bottom up in ways that all the way through the organization to the very highest levels gives you a really good result. Why? Because it's important societally. It's also mission critical for our business. We serve a really diverse customer base, which is where I started. If we don't have diversity, we ultimately aren't going to serve our customer base very well, period, end of story.
Well, Chris, just got one more question for you, which is, I'm sure it's going to take you back to your values, the values at Hilton. From the work that we've done, which we've done certainly a lot of it over the past year, around what are the things that are getting in organizations' way? What's causing the friction in terms of the things you just talked about in terms of hiring and promoting? And the hypothesis we're testing right now is related to empathy, and not the top layers of it, but really, does somebody have a leader, the empathetic concern to make things better for a group of people who aren't like them? Because the empathy, we believe, has to shift to action. There's, and one of the things that Hilton does really well is have this connection. That's why you were #1 twice. The work experience is great at the top, great at the middle, great on the front line, and great where the rooms are clean.
Yep.
So that's why it's
that is what I'm most proud of. It is not a 3-speed, 4-speed system. It's a 1-speed system. And this sounds corny, but you've heard me say it before. I think of Hilton as a family, right? It's a big ecosystem, but it's a family. And that's the way when I come to work every day, that's the way I think about all of our teams, whether they're on the front line in whatever job, whether they're corporate, wherever they are in the world. We're part of a big family. We're here. We sort of share a North Star. We think that each of us is contributing in a way that makes, that makes the world a little bit better place, a smile on a face, an opportunity for a job, learning and development, whatever it is. We all filter differently, but we think we're making the world a little bit better place, and it makes a difference. I think you're right. The empathy, it's sort of, that's why I say family. It sort of goes hand in glove. I mean, you can use a lot of different words, but while families fight, I guess sometimes we tend to have a lot of empathy for those that are ultimately, we don't always show it, but we have a lot of empathy for those that are closest to us. And I think you're right. When I think of this as our Hilton family, we should be unbelievably empathetic to everybody's thoughts and feelings and background and what's good and bad. I mean, that's why, when we do all of our engagement surveys with all of our team members, we're trying to really get underneath, like, what's working, what's not, to be empathetic, to be sympathetic, to be thoughtful about, what we could do better. I mean, reality is that, in diversity and inclusion, I think some people will view it as going back to that, as hard, right? Getting diverse slates, we're pushing them hard to drive results, and it makes it harder because it's harder to find a diverse slate. Well, that's why we have to build relationships. That's why we have to give them the tools, where it's not, and we take those excuses out. The most success I've had, honestly, is one, inside this company, most people care a lot, right? Just personally care. And so you're trying to sort of take that energy and focus it. And that works with a lot of people. The other thing I've had, which is harder, but I've had success over the last 2 decade and a half on, is connecting it to outcomes. I mean, I think some people, when they're in business, it's like, you ask me to do a job, you pay me to do a job, like, I'm doing my job, and, don't make it more difficult than it needs to be. So what I try and do there are a lot of things, on the social side, frankly, on the environmental side, there are a bunch of areas where I think people think, well, that, like that's not going to really necessarily help us drive a better business result. I happen to totally disagree with that. And I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out and been reasonably successful in being able to connect the dots to outcomes. That us having a more diverse ecosystem, up all the way up, not just at the levels of the company, where it, will allow us to have a stronger culture and ultimately better serve our customers. I can give you lots of examples on the environmental side too. So that's been important, so that people connected. Some people you don't need it, but some people you do need to connect it to an outcome that it is good for society, but it is also essential for a business like ours to be successful. You will be better at it. And so I think it's all of those things, but empathy is a great way to say it. I use the word, as I keep saying, I use the word family here all the time. It's one, and that is, you got to treat everybody, no matter what they're doing, like they're part of your family. And if you create a nurturing environment that takes care of people and helps develop people and gives them a better future, for they and their families, and they feel like they're one part of an ecosystem that is making the world a little bit better place, you'd be amazed at what they'll do. Right? You'll be amazed at what they'll do, and you're amazed at what a company can do when you put hundreds of thousands of people that feel that way together. In our case, they can make it through, a global pandemic and put the company in a better position than when it started, and that's pretty awe-inspiring.
It sure is. We'll invite Julian Lute back in to intimidate us and take us home. Chris, thanks very much. I thought about you and your team a lot. We were all going through a lot, but I knew you were going through more than most. So definitely glad to be here with you, seeing you with, a solution at the end of the tunnel. And, as we all get back to the lives that we want, that'll be good for your business, and you and your people deserve it.
Well, thank you, Michael. It's a great pleasure. Julian, thanks again for having me. Michael, time with you is cherished by me. I can't wait to do it in person, hopefully really soon. I'll get on a plane and come out and see you. But you guys are terrific. You've been incredibly impactful partners for us. Honestly, I think we wouldn't be where we are without you guys. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on your podcast. I think that is sincere. You guys have been partners at the table with us for 5 or 10 years, helping us try and figure out how to keep making that culture, stronger and better. And that is what has put us in the position we're in. So thank you for today, and thanks for what's been an amazing partnership. We look forward to never stopping in terms of investing and trying to take our culture to the next level.
Thank you, Chris. All right, Julian.
This has been a great conversation. I have a couple pages of notes already in terms of what you see, you, Chris, and your leaders doing during times like this. And thank you specifically for your authenticity and for protecting your people and the business during these times. Like Michael said, and you said, really glad that we can see a light at the end of this tunnel. And I want to thank everyone who joined us today. We'll be sharing this recording early next week. In April, our Better Together CEO conversation will be with KPMG, so make sure to mark your calendar. And if you haven't done so already, visit our Better Together landing page at greatplacetowork.com to stay in the know about the CEO conversation with both KPMG and our future sessions. Be sure to share it with your community. And if you'd like to share your experience or you have additional questions, please send them to michael_bush@greatplacetowork.com. On behalf of Great Place to Work, thank you again for joining us, because and we know that we are better together. Take good care.